Fellas, welcome back to the channel. Payday. Payday the third. The sequel to Payday 2. It is finally here and you can now play it for only a whopping €40. Now in this video I'm not gonna do anything special. I will just simply go over this game, give it a review and share my thoughts about it. See it more of a dead honest review. I said I will be doing something like this once Payday 3 comes out, and well, here we are. I'm going to add a little W counter that increases once for every good thing about the game. But it will also go down for 1 point every time I mention something bad about it. Here we go, I guess. Alright, starting with the good things here. One thing that is safe to say that has improved are the graphics. While they're not amazing or anything, the game certainly feels nice to look at, much better than Payday 2 or Payday 1. The NPCs feel much more alive as well in this game in terms of interacting. If you run into civilians, they actually react to that. If you stand in front of the cars, they would actually stop. It just makes the world feel more alive, and it's pretty nice actually. Civilians also do much more in this game. You can now use them to trade for time or resources like first aid kits. You can also shove them around and use them as human shields. Stealth has been massively improved. For starters, you can literally beat heist in stealth now without masking up at all, as you can do so many things now in casing mode. Some interactions are actually more than just holding a single button now. For example, lockpicking now has this little minigame where you have to hit the right spot to get it open faster. The saves also receive their own unique interaction, you actually have to crack it now. For reference, in Payday 2, this would have been a 45-second interaction by doing nothing but holding your F key. Another thing that I find interesting about stealth is the detection meter now is the same regardless what kind of equipment, as in what kind of armor or weapons you bring. It's always the same. I was gonna say this is a good thing, and I guess it is for solo queuing. But if you want to play a public game, it isn't as easy anymore telling apart if the others are going to play loud or stealth. There isn't even a tactic filter somewhere when you matchmake. You just sorta hop into a game and hope for the others to play stealth or loud depending what you want to do. So no points for this one. Obviously the special units return in this game as well. We got the Cloaker, Taser, or now Zappa as he is called, the Bulldozer, Shields, and now this guy who throws tear gas grenades, the Grenadier. That unit is generally the coolest and also most dangerous, I would say, as he's pretty common. At least more than the Bulldozer. And his grenades go after your health, not your armor. And it's pretty easy to die to him. So, be careful. Gameplay is honestly not too bad. It feels alright, but this game feels a bit slow here and there as performance kinda sucks. I tend to get down to 40 to 50 FPS on low settings with my 3080 Ti. Which, honestly, I don't know how that's possible, so minus point for that. But there's some pretty neat new things, such as sliding and generally how you jump on top of objects. That stuff feels really satisfying, but it has some downsides to it as well that I will get into later. But for the most part, I'd say gameplay or gunplay is pretty alright in this game. It's nothing amazing, but nothing terrible either. However, the absolute biggest W goes to the doors in Payday 3. You can now close them. Truly incredible. Alright, now time for the bad. This list is pretty long. But starting with what everyone dislikes about this game. And it's online only, baby. You have to connect to the servers in order to play this game. Even if you want to solo queue, you're still being thrown into an online game, which isn't even private or anything. There is options for public friends only or invite only, which you would figure is private. However, people from your friends list can still join you via your Steam friends list just fine without receiving an invite, even though the game is set to invite only. If you play solo for the entire game, you're still bound to the servers, and you can encounter decent issues like this one. Yeah, you can lag in your own private solo game. Like, what? I genuinely hope for Starbreeze to add an offline option because as it currently stands, this 1 point literally holds back this entire game. I mean, for Christ's sake, I had a 6-hour quote-unquote Payday 3 stream where I ended up playing just 2 heists, and the rest was spent playing Payday 2, Payday Heist, and Deep Rock Galactic because I wasn't able to log into the game thanks to this online-only bullshit. When you launch this game, you have to hope for the servers to work, otherwise you can't do jack shit. Now on launch you basically had server issues 24/7. But it's safe to say that these issues will get better over time as less and less people are going to play this game. But this issue of server problems is always going to be around. it's always going to plague this game.
Nutsack.
Why they don't just stick to a peer-to-peer system like what they have done with Payday 2 and Payday Heist is just beyond me. This also brings me to my next point. You cannot pause the game in your solo private game.
Nutsack.
Again, it's basically being treated as if you're playing a public game or something, even though it's private or whatever. Now, this isn't exactly the end of the world or anything, but it's super annoying. Like, why can't I pause in my own solo game? When you want to play a public game, you have to select what heist and difficulty you want, and the game will find or create a lobby for you. And that is totally RNG.
Nutsack.
I want to decide, personally whether or not I make a lobby for myself or turn a lobby already filled with people. Now, if you do end up finishing a heist, the only way to level up is via challenges. Not with the XP you get from the heist. Like, what the fuck?
Nutsack.
Some might argue this is pretty good because it forces you to use variety in your builds. You have to do certain things to get those challenges done. But this only really works up until like level 70, as everything above just gets stupidly grindy and unfun.
Nutsack.
I much rather prefer getting XP from doing the heists itself, like it was in Payday 2. Modding a weapon in Payday 3 feels useless for the most part. First of all, when you buy a gun, it's on level 1, and you have to level it up by playing the game.
Nutsack.
You don't get access to every mod for the gun immediately. This has been made to keep things from getting confusing, which I understand, but like, dude, it's just a weapon and the mods for it. Why the fuck do I need to level up my gun? Just give me the access to the mods already. This just genuinely pisses me off so bad. This is so bad. If you do mod a weapon, the way it's displayed, it's pretty bad as well. It just says what this mod does, and shows it over here on this graph again. There aren't any stats to be shown, and honestly this just feels kinda whack. I much rather prefer it how you mod weapons in Payday 2, as it shows the stats really clearly and nice. Not to mention, you also have access to all the modifications already when you buy a gun. If you don't have X mod for that weapon, you can just buy it with Continental coins. There is no stupid leveling or extra wasting time to get that one mod you want to test out, just to see, how it feels on the weapon.
Nutsack.
Another thing when it comes to buying weapons is the menu for it. There is no way to tell apart which weapon is a primary or a secondary. Sure, it's obvious to say that pistols are secondary, but what about this SMG? You would figure this is surely a secondary, but no, it's a primary. Hope you enjoyed wasting $300,000 because you can't even sell that weapon again. You can only destroy that weapon because fuck you.
Nutsack.
This game also has no melee weapons for some reason. Well, it does have the weapon butt or whatever, but it's only used to stun enemies or to destroy glass or something. You cannot kill enemies with it. Heck, you can't even reload cancel with the melee.
Let's do this.
Let's play.
Hold it.
It's
You,
showtime.
over there.
Beat him down,
Hold
beat
it.
him down. Can we kill him like this?
Eventually, we might. Oh. Do you shoot them?
No, that's a concussion mine.
Nutsack.
I also missed the safe house. Well, I didn't care that much about it in Payday 2 about that safe house. It's just a nice addition to have, and it feels really cool. It's almost as if there's an actual gang that have their own interests, and it makes them unique in their own way. And the safe house displayed that really nicely. But now we don't have any of that anymore, because, I don't know, it's just too much effort to make one.
Nutsack.
The skills in this game are beyond stupid. For starters, there are 3 buffs that can activate in one way or another. For example, the Moa skill gives you edge for every 35 bullets you shoot, meaning for every 35 bullets you shoot, you get 10% extra damage buff for however long. That on its own doesn't sound too bad, but there are so many skills that only start to work if you have at least one of these 3 buffs.
Nutsack.
There's even some skills that require 2 active buffs at the same time to work. I don't think I have to tell you how insanely stupid and ass that is.
Nutsack.
What makes it even worse is that the skills in this game are so boring as well. Like here, the skills at the most left are your tier 1 skills. The one on the most right are the highest skills or max tier skills. And they have such things as, quote, your base sprinting speed is increased by 10% when your mask is on.
Nutsack.
Like what the fuck? Imagine in Payday 2 instead of Inspire Aced, you would get a picklock boost by 10% on the max skill. The highest, the max tier skill. Not tier 1, max. There are no interesting skills to really enhance your build by making it that much more powerful or fun to play. Again, in Payday 2 you have stuff like Inspire, which makes an amazing medic build. You can use Berserker to get up to 2 times damage permanently if you lower your health in certain ways. If your build has low enough detection, you can use Low Blow to get crits or Sneaky Bastard to get more dodge. There's none of that in Payday 3. No interesting things, no interesting gimmicks or unique builds, none of that.
Nutsack.
Oh, by the way, speaking of, dodge is not a thing in Payday 3 either. It just straight up doesn't exist. You know, I'm just gonna say that here.
Nutsack.
The only thing that I enjoy about these skills is the way how you can select them, considering you're pretty limited on skill points. You select your tier 1 skill in a certain tree, and now you can choose any skill in that tree without having to waste points on something you don't want. But that doesn't really help with the fact how plain boring they are. Which makes you question, what are the best skills in this game? Well, for stealth I cannot really say all that much because I haven't played much of it, but for loud it's basically anything armor related. Why is that? Because the armor mechanic sucks in this game.
Nutsack.
For the sake of being realistic, you have this armor bar that doesn't regenerate. You can get some small parts of your armor back with skills like Plate Up, but eventually you will lose all of your armor and you can't do much anymore. That is until you use the armor bag to refresh your armor.
Nutsack.
This deployable is basically the meta of this game. Almost every loud game uses one of these deployable on everyone. Talk about build variety.
Nutsack.
Again, this is for the sake of being more realistic, I guess, which is weird because this is the sequel to the mess that Payday 2 is. But it's probably because this armor system adds to the difficulty. It tries to make the game more of a resource management game, which doesn't sound that bad, I guess, but I'm just no fan of it at all, at least how they have done it. I'd much rather have armor that regenerates, which allows for error, and, you know, I'd much rather deal with other things like ammo economy instead of armor. A great example of this is Deep Rock Galactic. You have a normal armor system that slowly regenerates over time. And to get ammo back, you have to call in resupplies, which you can buy or call in by mining a certain amount of the stuff in the caves. It makes for a good balance, and it isn't super frustrating to play with. Do I want something similar like that in Payday 3? Not necessarily, but I think it shows that you don't need to have weird and confusing armor mechanics to balance your game for the sake of difficulty and resource management. Now let's go back to this styling mechanic I was talking about earlier. While at first it certainly feels nice and cool to have, it does get annoying over time in my eyes. And you cannot disable it either, which can lead into situations of you going into a spot you didn't mean to go, or even fall off a building.
Nutsack.
The same applies to this jump thing over objects. Again, on paper it sounds amazing, and it's actually pretty nice for the most part. But the thing is that you jump over things by just standing in front of it and pressing space. So let's say you're on a roof, you have a short wall or something in front of you, and you want to see down to the ground to shoot cops or whatever. So you jump to see more of it, but then you end up falling down to the ground because, well, good game.
Nutsack.
Now with all of this said, let's just do a quick comparison with how long it takes to get into a private lobby on both Payday 3 and Payday 2 and see which one is quicker. Now keep in mind that Payday 3 can be much worse with the matchmaking whenever the servers tend to have a stroke. You can wait up to like an hour or so, but even if the servers work just fine, I hope you enjoy waiting.
Nutsack.
Oh, that reminds me. Do you know how the newer heists in Payday 2 try to not feature objectives that have like drills? Because no one really likes waiting and stuff. Well, that doesn't exactly exist in Payday 3 either all that much. Sure, there are some drills, but it's not that bad. It's actually pretty okay. However, there are some objectives like, you know, to hack doors or something. So you have to interact with a panel and then stand in 10 billion spots to get a good signal through shade. I don't know why this exists, but I absolutely hate these objectives.
Nutsack.
For the drill objectives, you can at least move around wherever you want. But now you're forced to stand in certain little spots to get this objective done.
Nutsack.
Now I would say more about the heist in general, but there isn't much to be said. They are decent, except with the exception of the weird cycle of waiting objectives or whatever. They do sometimes feel pretty empty and can be done pretty quickly as well. Honestly, sometimes it feels like you're wasting more time trying to load into a heist than actually playing them. But that just might be me, I don't know. Now let's briefly talk about the enemies themselves and the AI. The AI is pretty bad in this game. Sometimes there's like 1 or 2 cops suddenly behind you spraying like there's no tomorrow. Other times they walk past you and don't react for a solid 10 seconds, even if you stand in front of them. I guess this happens because of several issues and lag. You know? Going back to the online only problem. Oh.
Nutsack.
Now the special enemies feel whack for the most part. The Zapper usually just stands there and shoots you like a normal cop. The Cloaker feels insanely
Nutsack.
unfair as he just runs out of nowhere and kicks you. You have no idea where he's coming from except for the audio. How does the Cloaker even know where you are when he can't even see you? Well, I guess he's using wall hacks or something. What I do like is that if the Cloaker gets killed immediately after he kicked you, you can just stand up normally without having to be revived. You can also free yourself from him with skills once per heist. That's actually not that bad. The Bulldozer, while being somewhat of a threat on his own, spawns insanely rare to be an issue. He has weird ass taunts as well that last way too long, which allows you to kill him pretty easily. If anything, he's just a bullet sponge and not much more. Artists said stuff about the grenade throwing guy. He's pretty good. The shields aren't that bad as well in this game. Maybe a bit annoying, but you can shoot through their glasses, so that's actually pretty good. The cops also usually go behind him as well, for cover. The sniper on the other hand is pretty dumb. It takes way too long to finally shoot you. Before he gets to land a bullet on you, you could have killed him like 10 times already.
Nutsack.
Alright, let's go back to connection issues. I'm not gonna go into detail here, but I had several issues trying to invite my friends into my party, as they didn't appear on my Payday 3, and my Steam invites didn't work either. Why? I have no idea.
Nutsack.
So I tried again the next day with different people, and while I did get to a lobby with them, there were some weird issues happening as well. Nothing that I would consider really bad, but something that I would think is just unacceptable for a game that is €40. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look while being in lobby waiting for the game. I'm here with my good friend Dark Ruby. I hit ready to play the game, which is quickly followed by my friend saying he cannot ready up for some reason. The ready button simply does not exist for him. I then tried to unready myself for whatever reason, just to realize I cannot do that. All I can do is leave the lobby and nothing else. I can't even buy favors, I can't change loadout, I can do nothing. I'm literally forced to sit here like this for minutes now, or leave the lobby. Sometime later another friend of mine joins, and now I cannot ready up anymore, even though I already was ready before. Which then allowed Dark Ruby to be able to hit ready. I have no idea how this is possible, but okay. Now we are forced to sit in this lobby like this until it starts by itself. I sure do love wasting time.
Nutsack.
Another thing that is missing here is the chat. There is no chat at all. So let's say if you're in a public game and you want to communicate to your fellow heisters telling them what kind of strategy you want to do. Like for example if you want to play stealth or loud, or what kind of equipment you should bring. You know, anything. You can't do jack shit.
Nutsack.
Another thing I want to mention is how the HUD looks like. At some point it does look pretty clean and not too bad. However, the assault banner itself is literally just a flashing text, and you know, it's pretty bad. It's not what we had in Payday 2. This is more of a nitpick, I guess, but these visuals are pretty important, I'd say. But what matters more is the lack of information on your teammates. You have no idea how much ammo they have left, you don't know what kind of deployable they have, even though it's most likely an armor bag on all three heisters, but still you wouldn't know if they already placed it or not. Going back to Payday 2, you see all of these things nicely. You see exactly how much ammo they have left, you see their deployables, heck you can even see the cable ties and throwables.
Nutsack.
While I could rant about more things in this game, like the abnormal use of motion blur, or the fact that you cannot shoot flashbangs thrown by the cops and whatnot, I think you get the idea that this game is anything but a finished product. This game feels more of an early access really with several issues. They did have an open beta to stress test the servers, but that hasn't really done all that much, making Payday 3 what has to be the worst game launch of the year. The only good thing about this game is the gameplay and improved graphics. But almost everything else just brings this game down. As it is right now, I genuinely don't enjoy this game. I'd much rather play more of Payday 2 instead, but safe to say that Starbreeze will try to improve Payday 3 and make it a better game in the future. The game will however always be plagued by servers and online only. That is unless they add an offline option, which is something that the majority of people beg for, including me obviously. I personally cannot recommend this game, especially for a €40 price tag with special editions up to $90. I expect a quality game for that kind of money, but all I get is this poor excuse of a finished game. Many other people share these thoughts as well, as the game currently sits at a mostly negative with like 33% positive reviews on Steam. Obviously, I wanted this game to be amazing and fun just like Payday 2 was in its earlier days. Payday 2 in its late days received so many bad updates like update 237 that just made it that much worse, and honestly, it needs a replacement. I can confidently say this because I have more than 8,500 hours in Payday 2. I know what I'm talking about. But Payday 3 failed to deliver that, and somehow Payday 2 is still more enjoyable than the third. Heck, there's even more people playing the game, like the second game, over the third one. And over time, less and less people will be playing Payday 3 because of these issues that I said before. With that said, we can only hope for Starbreeze to improve the game. As for my channel, I probably won't be doing more Payday 3 content. That is, unless they somehow fix the game and make it fun to play for me. I said this already in the past, but for a game with a €40 price tag, I expect it to work. For example, I have more fun with a game from 2011, which is Payday Heist, which is only like 15 bucks. How is that possible? I don't know. Maybe it's because it has something to do that it doesn't have online only. Anyway, sorry about this more negative video. I just had to say these things about Payday 3. Have a good one, lads.
Online only. What happens if the servers go down? Well, they won't.